He banged on my door for weeks, then I opened it. Radiator clanked, a mournful sigh that echoed through the empty apartment. Rain lashed against the window panes, a steady drumming rhythm that usually lulled me to sleep, but not tonight. Tonight the banging started again. It had been going on for weeks. At first I tried to ignore it, chalking it up to the building's ancient plumbing or the rambunctious habits of my neighbors, but it had escalated. It began as a tentative tapping, almost polite. Now it was a full-blown assault, a relentless pounding that vibrated through the floorboards and rattled the flimsy doorframe. I peeked through the peephole, as I had done countless times before. Nothing. Just the dimly lit hallway, the faded floral wallpaper peeling at the edges, the oppressive silence broken only by the rain and, of course, the incessant bang, bang, bang. My name is Sarah. I'm 28, a freelance writer. I moved into this place after things fell apart. A fresh start. That's what I needed. Solitude. This apartment on the 4th floor of a pre-war building in a somewhat run-down neighborhood seemed perfect. Affordable, quiet, and just far enough away from everything to allow me to disappear. The first few nights were bliss. I unpacked my boxes, arranged my books, and even managed to get some work done. I almost felt hopeful. Then the banging started. Mr. Abernathy, the elderly gentleman who lived across the hall, was the first person I spoke to about it. He was a strange character, always dressed in a tweed suit and carrying a worn leather briefcase. He had a perpetual look of melancholy in his eyes, like he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. "Have you heard anything unusual lately?" I asked him one morning, catching him as he was leaving his apartment. He peered at me over his spectacles, his gaze unsettlingly intense. "Unusual. In this building, my dear, everything is unusual." He paused, then added, "Some things are best left undisturbed, you know. Some doors are best left unopened." His words sent a chill down my spine. "What do you mean?" I pressed. He just shook his head sadly and continued down the hall. "You'll find out soon enough," he muttered, disappearing around the corner. I tried to dismiss his cryptic warning as the ramblings of an old man, but the banging persisted, growing louder and more aggressive each night. I started keeping a log, meticulously recording the times, the number of knocks, any accompanying sounds. My notebook filled with page after page of entries, a testament to my growing obsession. 10:47 p.m. 3 loud bangs, followed by a scraping sound like nails on wood. 1:12 a.m. relentless pounding for 50 minutes straight. I could feel the vibrations in my chest. 3:58 a.m. a single, hesitant knock, almost pleading. I installed a cheap security camera outside my door, hoping to catch whoever was responsible. Night after night, the camera recorded nothing but empty hallways, static and silence. It was as if the banging only happened when I was listening. "Maybe you're just imagining it," Emily, my best friend, said when I called her, desperate for reassurance. She lived in another state and her voice sounded distant and tinny through the phone. "Imagining it, Emily. I haven't slept properly in weeks. It's driving me insane. I know, she said soothingly, but maybe it's just stress. You've been through a lot lately. Maybe you should talk to someone you know, a professional." I scoffed. "A therapist? You think a therapist is going to stop the banging?" She sighed. "I just want you to be okay, Sarah. Maybe this apartment isn't the fresh start you were hoping for." She was right, of course. It wasn't. It was a nightmare. I contacted the landlord, Mr. Henderson, a perpetually sweaty man with a comb over that barely concealed his bald spot. He was predictably unhelpful. "Banging, you say? Probably just the pipes. Old building, you know, they make noises." He dismissed my concerns with a wave of his hand. "I'll send someone to take a look, but don't expect miracles. These things happen." No one ever came. Desperate, I called the police. Detective Miller, a weary-looking man with tired eyes, arrived a few hours later. He listened to my story patiently, taking notes in a small, spiral-bound notebook. "And you say you've never seen anyone outside your door?" he asked. "Never," I replied. "I always check the peephole. There's never anyone there." He frowned. "Have you considered that maybe you're just hearing things? Stress can do strange things to a person." "I'm not crazy, detective," I said, my voice trembling. "I'm telling you, someone is banging on my door. Deliberately. Intentionally. They're trying to, I don't know, torment me." He sighed. "I'll file a report, Ms. Walker. But without any evidence, there's not much I can do. If it happens again, give us a call." He left, leaving me feeling even more isolated and vulnerable than before. I started researching the history of the building. spending hours poring over old newspaper articles and online archives. I discovered that the building had a dark past. There had been a series of unexplained deaths and disappearances over the years, all connected to the same apartment mine. One article, from the 1950s, described the case of a young woman who had been found dead in the apartment, her body riddled with unexplained bruises. The police had ruled it a suicide, but the woman's family had always maintained that she had been murdered. Another article detailed the disappearance of a child who had lived in the apartment in the 1970s. The child had vanished without a trace, and the case had never been solved. The more I learned, the more convinced I became that the banging was connected to the building's dark history. That something sinister was trying to communicate with me. The nightmares started soon after. Vivid, terrifying dreams filled with shadows and whispers. I would wake up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding in my chest, the sound of the banging still echoing in my ears. The line between reality and delusion began to blur. I started seeing things out of the corner of my eye, hearing voices when no one was there. I felt like I was losing my mind. One night, the banging reached a fever pitch. It was louder and more relentless than ever before. It was accompanied by a new sound, a muffled, distorted voice, chanting something I couldn't understand. I felt a surge of adrenaline, a desperate need to make it stop. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed a kitchen knife from the drawer, my hand trembling. I told myself that I had to confront whoever was doing this, that I had to face my fears. I crept to the door, my heart pounding in my chest. I took a deep breath and threw it open. The hallway was empty, but something was different. The air was thick and cold, and there was a strange odor hanging in the air, a faint scent of ozone and burning hair. It was a smell that had been there intermittently, subtly, but now was unmistakable. The banging hadn't stopped. It was still going, louder than ever. But now I realized it wasn't coming to me. It was coming from me. I slowly turned around and walked back into my apartment. The furniture was overturned, the books scattered, the contents of my drawers strewn across the floor. It looked like a bomb had gone off, and then it hit me. A memory long buried resurfaced. A memory of a night years ago, a night filled with screaming and violence. A night I had tried to forget. A night my father had the banging intensified, a deafening roar in my ears. It wasn't the building. It wasn't a ghost. It was me. It was the trauma I had tried to bury, the pain I had tried to escape. It was all coming back, flooding my mind, threatening to consume me. I stood in the middle of my trashed apartment, the knife clutched in my hand as the banging started again, louder than ever. The source was now undeniably within my own mind. I was trapped, a prisoner of my own past. The last thing I remember is the sound of sirens in the distance and then darkness. I don't know how long I was unconscious. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. Emily was sitting beside me, her face etched with worry. "What happened?" I croaked. "They found you in your apartment," she said. "You had trashed the place. The neighbors called the police. The banging," I started. "There was no banging, Sarah," Emily said gently. "The police said there was no sign of forced entry. They think you had a breakdown, but it was real," I insisted. "I heard it. I felt it." Emily squeezed my hand. "I know you did," she said, "but maybe it was all in your head." Maybe she was right. Maybe it was all in my head. But I still couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that something sinister was still lurking in the shadows. A brief, almost throwaway line at the very end mentions a local news report about a series of strange occurrences in the neighborhood, suggesting that Sarah's experience may be part of a larger, more sinister phenomenon. A news reporter on the television in my room mentioned a spike in strange events throughout the city. Unexplained noises and violent outbursts. A general feeling of unease that had begun to settle over the area like a shroud. They called it a collective anxiety, but looking into the darkness, I wondered to myself if perhaps, maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought I was.